Are you just trying to make it look repent? As soon as I hit the freaking go live button, you're just trying to look.
You got to work on looking like you're deep in thought. It's a skill.
I mean, I've spent quite a bit.
On that 96-1 that was loose in the lead.
That was tough. I second guessed myself. Double. So I doubled into the second single. Had the wrong Luis Mendez. I should. The other Mendez horse was like super outworking the other horse. Then doubling out of that race, I decided to fade the rail on that turf sprint. I think that was like the first time that the rail won in a turf sprint. I thought there was a big offer on the rail. And this golden I was gonna spread the last leg. Need a one home, but just missed golden. But like Caleb and I, Caleb thinks.
I think it might have just been when you were sitting back. You were pretty.
Oh, when I was sitting back. Yeah, that was probably because this. Oh, I think there's something wrong with it. So, give me a second here. Mark?
You sound fine to us, and Steven just said it's only when you're not talking directly into it. If you look away, it goes. Yeah. So, yep.
That's weird. Okay, I was looking at my mic monitor, and it all of a sudden stopped. Maybe I got to bring it a little bit closer. Anyways, let's yeah, we're on the wrong lead. Today is it today Chase's birthday or was it yesterday?
No, today is Chase's
birthday.
So, yeah, he's celebrating with a family. I think they were
his other family.
Yes, his other family. I think they were gotten some red wine and throwing some steaks in the grill, and he's hanging out with the wifey and the kids. So good for him.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, so we'll be missing Chase today. I know he sends his best. I am sure he will be active in the Discord tomorrow. But if you need picks or ideas, I would message him on Twitter. Wish him a happy birthday on Twitter. Yeah, Dylan says he's still not hearing it, so I'm just gonna go ahead and unplug this because I think I have a problem on my.
That's weird because you sound fine to me.
He just said good now in chat, Josh. So yeah, you sound fine to me too. So yeah, but oh hey Dennis, how's it going? Yeah, and by the way, if you guys are on Discord tomorrow and you feel like tailing somebody, Chase has been absolutely killing it at Golden Gate. So he has the bias down there pretty cold. You know, he was doing very, very, very well there. So props to him for capping a track that I have a very hard time at.
Yeah,
Golden Gate's not for me, but good, nice on him. Wherever you make your money is where you should play.
Unless it's Delta, right? Isn't there some Delta insult there?
Well, if you can make money there, then go play there. I mean, if you have no standards.
I mean, some people say if you can make money there, you can make money anywhere. So, no, and so, anyways, the reason why I was double checking things because I was having problems before, with this microphone. So, for some reason, just like randomly at some point, it just stopped working, and then I don't know if there was like dust got into the microphone or something, but it was just really weird. And like I watched my monitor for my mic here on stream, and I was noticing it too, Dylan. I would be talking, and all of a sudden it just like wasn't picking anything up. I maybe it's something that Discord's picking up, but maybe it just wasn't getting picked up in OBS because I'm kind of putting it out two ways. So it could have been that. Maybe that's why you guys were able to hear me on stream, but or not hear me on stream, but Caleb and Mark, you guys. It might have just been an OBS thing. Looks like reconnecting it seemed to yeah. Chase has absolutely been on a heater at Golden Gate. We'll talk real quickly about Golden Gate. I know we have I never pronounce his name right. It's like Diet Lahider or something or other. He's one of our regulars in Discord, and he's actually been doing a really, really good job at Golden Gate. And he, he pretty much explained that for the most part, Golden Gate tends to play pretty speed favoring. So there's just been a couple of times where I've just bet speed horses, and you know what? Even though they've been at low odds, they've been pretty consistent. So both on turf and on the all weather, speed seems like it's been king. And whenever you get a pace bias like that, that's usually something that chases all over. So yeah, so not surprised that the Wolf is doing really well there. I have somehow just I've just been in one of those funks where I think I've just been overthinking a lot. So I've been underusing and overusing certain horses here. So glad I'm glad somebody's doing well. We talked a little bit offline that Caleb and I think are having record months with just how bad things have gone. And Mark, I think you said that yours isn't going all that great either.
Yeah, it's been a rough few weeks. I mean, I don't know if it's that I'm playing junk tracks or I'm playing tracks that I don't really have an angle at because I'm bored and there isn't the normal bigger racing stuff this time of year to focus that attention on. But I think these races at Churchill this weekend look to be pretty solid. Some pretty classy fields. This late pick 5 sequence that I think we're going to cover is. Really looks solid. I mean, it's a pretty good group here, and until you get a few more tracks going, this is pretty good stuff.
Yeah, this race 7, the Shawnee at mile and 16th on the dirt is the return of Dunbar Road, which is literally what I wrote at the top of my piece. Which I know Mark was a favorite of yours last year. You was that your largest win bet ever was on Dunbar Road, or was that just last year?
It was the largest one last year, second largest ever.
Yeah, that was JK-esque on the way that you bet that. And at least I know briefly from our talk, both Caleb and I are against this horse. So why don't you go ahead and talk up this horse so we can just destroy this horse's character and your handicap process.
No. You can destroy all the things you want to destroy here. I mean, she's class of the field in here. She all of last year. I don't know why. Well, she was and also eligible for the Kentucky Oaks and didn't end up drawing into the field there. I think if she had, she actually would have probably made a splash in the Kentucky Oaks. She ran an allowance up at Belmont where she absolutely destroyed the field and won for fun. We'd known that Chad Brown had some absolute monsters in his barn, and we knew that there was sort of one that, two good dirt horses, one that was good at a little longer distances, one a little shorter. And this is the slightly longer distance dirt horse that he had in his barn. She came back very impressive in the Mother Goose, although the fig didn't come back monstrous. And then she just ran, eyeballs out in the Alabama. She won for fun, absolutely destroyed what was a pretty darn good field. And and then she moved on to face some older towards the end of the year. She's not at the Blue Prize Elite Midnight Bisou level, or was not as a 3-year-old. This is her first start as a 4-year-old. I expect her to move forward off all those efforts last year. She doesn't probably have the best of run style for Churchill, but she towers over these on classiness, on her figs, sort of every metric that you could really want. And I just think she's the horse to beat. And I think she's if you're playing this, I think she's a pretty easy single.
Wow, the metric where she does not tower over this field is pace. there is no speed in this field except for one horse who is going to be my probably single. She's a Julie. I don't disagree rather with anything else you said about Dunbar. Like she is the class of the field. She does have the figs. She does have the connections. But she's not a horse that really wants to be very forwardly placed, and there's not very much speed in this race. The only other horse I guess you could really argue might try to show some speed would be maybe the 3-horse Emma with John Court getting up, who's a pretty aggressive rider. Otherwise, I mean, the blinkers come off the 6 and Rosario gets up. I doubt that horse shows much speed. And that's it. It leaves you with the 8. I know this horse was beaten by Dunbar Road last time out, but if you look back, I just never thought this was a horse that really wanted to go a mile and an eighth. I thought She's a Julie is always best at that mile to a mile and a 16th distance. And she's 4 for 9 at the distance here. Her last 4 losses were all at a mile and an eighth, where she lost ground in the stretch. I think she's just going a little too far. And I think with Santana up, he's going to get this horse on the front like he traditionally has. And even if the track's not playing super speed friendly, I think that if she gets out there and goes 23 and change, 48 and change, 48 flat, even 47, I mean, she has a chance to hold on. Now, if they get stupid or somebody suicide sends, then yeah, it sets up for Dunbar. Dunbar Road might be good enough to win anyway. I actually don't know what the morning lines are. I'm going to check that now because I have them turned off. I imagine there's the top 2 choices. 4 to 5. Oh my God. Yeah. 4 to 5. I think you have to go against Dunbar Road. That's a stupid price for a horse that is, coming off of a pretty long layoff. Chad Brown I saw some stat on Twitter. He's 16% with 4-year-olds off a layoff, 90-day plus layoff, which isn't bad, but for a 26% guy, that's noticeably worse. And this isn't a terribly difficult spot to come back in, but yeah, pace-wise, I'm just wondering, she might be a little bit flat and have a little bit much to do turning for home. So I'm going with She's a Julie. I won't completely toss Dunbar Road, obviously, in the pick 5, but She's a Julie will probably be my single A.
Can I just say same? Because you pretty much touched on every single point that I would probably make here. One thing Dennis actually in chat also pointed out, She's a Julie is run at Churchill 6 times, is 3-1-1. So the horse seems to like Churchill. Churchill has been playing to speed on the dirt as of late, and She's a Julie for the most part looks to be pretty close to a lone speed type here. I'm not going to get tricked by the all Emma trick again. Last time I thought that, hey, maybe she would press Serengeti Empress. She tossed the rider, so not feeling real great about there being really any other speed here. I will say about Dunbar Road, at least on Briz, has put up some pretty decent pace figures. So I don't know so much if Dunbar Road would have a problem keeping up with fast fractions, but at the same time, I think that this is an easier trip for She's a Julie. Ricardo, is going to be on the lead, which is his favorite position to be. So I think that this is going to set up nice pace wise and bias wise for She's. Now, obviously, we'll see how Churchill's playing tomorrow. If for some reason that bias flips, if we start seeing a lot more horses coming from off the pace, then I think you can make the case for using a little bit more of Dunbar Road. But I think for me personally, this race is probably a pass. I tend to not really play many horizontals, but I think if I were to play anything out of this race, it would probably be trying to either maybe double in to She's a Julie or double out into the next race with She's a Julie and try and get around Dunbar Road. I mean, this is always, and I think we've talked about this. I know I've seen other people kind of bring it up in chat, and the 2 heavy favorites are coming off a very, very long layoff. And I kind of feel like that sometimes is sometimes leaves room for, upset. I just don't know if there's really any other horse in here that could even come close to beating Dunbar Road, or She's a key effort. What do you guys think?
The only other horse I could make any sort of a case for in here would be the 6 Volt, who has some figs that sort of kind of fit. Is 5 for 6 at the distance, so this seems to be her. She's a bit of a distance specialist in here. I don't love Santana getting off, but I mean you're getting Rosario, and this is more of his style of horse. So she's the other one here that, and also Brad Cox has been absolutely lights out this first week of Churchill. So she's one that I could make a bit of a case for, but she's really the only other one I want just a tiny bit of in here. And I do agree with you guys. I want a little bit of She's a Julie, but I'll be predominantly through Dunbar Road.
If I had to, I can see the case for the 6. Maybe if you want to play it as a C. The only other horse I would really consider here is if we do get rain, I would look at the 5, Another Broad. I don't think this horse really makes sense on a fast track. I think that she barely makes sense on an off track, but the horse has 0 for 10 over a fast track and 4 for 6 and has always ran in the money over an off track. Clearly, she just likes the slop. If that's the case, I would probably upgrade her and then maybe downgrade She's a Julie just a touch, given that her worst effort by far came on an off track, but you have to go so far back to get to that. It could just be, it's off of my form, so I'm not sure if it was like a maiden race or what, or maybe she scratches out from off tracks. But to have raced 17 times and only caught an off track once, especially in Kentucky and New York, is a little surprising. So I would probably downgrade She's a Julie if it comes up sloppy, and maybe upgrade Another Broad and Dunbar Road, obviously, as well, being a perfect 2 for 2 on an off track.
Yeah, and just kind of looking through chat here, it looks like aka Bob Dole 8 has an aggressive rider in Santana, and I completely I love Santana on the lead lone speed horse. But yeah, She's a Julie has lost to Blue Prize, Midnight Beat, Golden Award, the late, and he thinks that all those horses would be favorites here over the rest of the horses. Dunbar Road, I guess, kind of is in that company-ish, but yeah, I don't know. I think that if it is going to be wet, and Dennis does say it get rain, yeah, I think that you got to move Dunbar Road up a little. But I haven't looked at the. And then John Massey in chat also says that he's going to be Another Broad on next, mostly. So it seems like kind of those are the 4 horses that it looks like people are going to want to use with mostly Dunbar Road and She's a Julie, but I guess keep an eye on Another Broad and Vault and $ Rosario. Crazy happens there.
I was going to say, before we move on, one little thing that I think as a handicapper, you're tending to be contrarian. That tends to be how you look at the world, and I think it's good to kind of understand both sides of the situation. I'll be very heavily on Dunbar Road. There are a couple of question marks that do come up with Dunbar Road, and it's the fact that Jose Ortiz has not been riding very well at Churchill Downs, and also Chad Brown is winless at Churchill Downs so far this meet. He's 0 for 5. He had a very short-priced favorite that didn't hit the board today. He's gotten 3 seconds, so okay, he's been kind of around the board, but there's definitely some questions over, there's a couple ways to look at it. One is, did some recent arrests potentially, ruining Chad Brown, as well as a couple of other trainers we've seen their stats, significantly fall off? Or is it just a case that Chad maybe didn't send his A string horses to Churchill, and Dunbar Road is sort of his first A to really show up there? You look at it both ways, but it's definitely something to note that Chad has not been his normal self so far this meet.
Looks like I'm having mic problems again for some reason, so I'll have to take a look at that right now. Why don't you got anything else, Caleb, on this race, or are we ready to
No, I think this is the race where you eat your chalk, depending on whichever chalk you want. The She's a Julie or Dunbar Road, and I think you look for prices elsewhere. I don't think this is a spot to get too cute, personally.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. I think there's a couple of races, and this is one of those sequences that kind of sets itself up for ABC style players, where there's a couple real binary decisions here. If you don't like Dunbar Road and you don't like, She's a Julie, you're almost in a spot where you're buying this field. And then you can say that the same sort of things for some of the later races where there's some horses that I assume to be pretty short price favorites, and so you're sort of, do you like them or don't you? And how do you manage that on a ticket structure? Where ABCs, you can sort of manage that. If you're somebody who's playing caveman tickets, it's really hard. You either say, okay, I'm going to single and eat chalk, or do I try to spread and then get a really expensive ticket and then hope it pays? And so I would say in this sequence, it's one that I really like being an ABC player, but be real careful about your ticket size here and make sure you're getting value for your risk. Let's put it that way.
Make sure you pick the right single is what he's saying, because it cost Caleb today.
Yep. Thanks, Breeze Blanc.
All right, let me guys in the chat, just let me know if it sounds a little bit better. I normally have a noise gate on, which will stop you from hearing me like scroll up and down incessantly and like type, but maybe it somehow is too sensitive now, and that's maybe why I'm cutting out. So just let me know if I have any more problems here. So why don't we move on here to, it looks like race 8, the Tepin. We were talking about this a little bit offline, and I think we all liked like 6 or 7 horses in this race, so this one might take a little bit. We're gonna be going a mile on the turf. Mark, I think you had a little bit of insight from one of our users on how this is gonna this might play out a little bit.
Yeah, Evil Bob Dole's got some really cool stats about post position and win percentage at Churchill, and they've all been pinned in the Churchill Downs channel. So if you want to hop in there and take a look, but the at Churchill at a mile outside posts are terrible, and your 2 favorites in this race are in those terrible slots. I would expect the 9 sharing and the 14 alms. One of those is probably going to be your favorite. There's a pretty good argument you can make here just on post position bias to fade both of them. I'm not sure how I'm going to apply it, but I think those slots were like 5 or 6% sort of range. They were pretty bad out there. So it becomes a game of where do you want to go here and try to find value if that post's outside or that bad.
Yeah, it looks like and John Massey brings up a really good point that we're 3 weeks off of Arkansas Derby week. I think this would this be Preakness week, or would that have been last week?
That would
be Preakness week, because it would be first Saturday in May is Derby, which is 2 weeks ago. This would be Preakness weekend.
Yeah. So it sounds like this is probably right when some of these bigger horses would be kind of pointing to other races. So I think that we're going to definitely start seeing a lot of these horses start to come out the woodwork, even on these smaller, I guess these non-graded stakes races. I think if the past couple of weeks have been any indication, pretty much any stakes race is probably going to attract, that's the word I was looking for, attract graded stakes types. So yeah, this is a full field of really good horses. And I had a heck of a time going through this. I could probably just like start naming like every single horse I like in this race. But the 2 that I'll kind of let you guys handle, probably more of the more logical horses, I guess. The 2 though that I was actually really interested in is going to be the 2 Abscond and the 3 Walk in Marrakesh. Abscond, anytime, especially in Kentucky, you get Tyler Gaffalione in a turf route. You kind of have to take a look at the horse. I know apparently we have a reputation for looking at jockeys and trainers a little too much, but in this case, I'm really interested in Abscond. As far as speed figures, the horse is right there. It's a little bit below, Sharing and Alms. I think Sharing is probably a little bit flattered by the speed figure given in the the Breeders' Cup race. So with the Brisnet figs, I always think that sometimes some of these turf routes get wonky speed figures, so I try not to pay attention too much to them. I'm much more loose, I guess, on my range of speed figures I find usable. So kind of going outside of Alms and Sharing. Abscond's figures are right there, and not very far behind is Walk in Marrakesh. I know Walk in Marrakesh. I think I've been on the last two times she's run, and has disappointed me both times. But I'm going to go to the well for a third time here with Walk in Marrakesh. Gets Jose Ortiz aboard, who I probably on his day when healthy is probably the best jock in this colony. But I know he's been off to a bit of a slow start. Brisnet's got him at 11% here. I can't think of any mounts he won on today, and I watched pretty closely, but maybe I missed something. But this horse, came second in the Florida Oaks. Is going to be posted inside, which seems to be where the better part of the turf course is. And I think, right there with Abscond at that 8 to 10 to 1 price range, I think is going to be interesting to try and get around these favorites that are posted on the outside.
Yeah, I think this is the kind of race, and I mean, to address the horses you liked, I guess, I was interested in Abscond a little bit. Walking Marrakesh doesn't really do anything for me. This horse has had enough chances here to make her mark, and I just don't think she's really quite that good. But there's a lot of horses, I think, in this race that fit into that bucket. Well, like they have a number that's almost good enough, and if they're 3-year-old fillies, so they could improve and run a race that would win, and they're not that far behind the favorites. But truthfully, I think this is a race that everybody's going to spread. And I personally think that there's only 3 horses that I really want here, which are the 2 favorites, the 9 Sharing and the 14 Alms. And the other one would be the 15 Eve of War if she draws in. I think that the case for the favorites is kind of obvious. I am afraid Sharing will be overbet, as horses who win a Breeders' Cup race or Triple Crown race typically are overbet. But she broke from the 11 post at Santa Anita, was able to navigate that. I understand maybe there's a post bias she's up against, but I just think that she's significantly better than this bunch. And I think the same thing for Alms. I mean, the 14 post is horrible, but it's Paco Lopez, and this horse has some early speed. There's a couple of horses in this race that do need the lead that I expect to send hard. So if Alms can use some of her early speed to send and then get over and take up in that second flight of horses, maybe only in the 2 or 3 path, I think that she can work out a good enough trip from there to where she's just good enough to win. So I will probably play this. Well, I guess Eve of War, if she draws in, also has done no favors by the post, but her 2 of her 3 career starts were just monstrous efforts. And you could arguably draw a line through the one race that she had where she was off the board, where she stumbled in the break and then had to steady early on and just never really got into the race when she was chasing behind some fairly slow fractions going 6.5. So I think if she draws in, she becomes very interesting in this race, especially at 12 to 1. That being said, I think those 3 are on another plane from the rest of this field. So I'll probably play this race with like an AC type structure, because I have no real opinion after those 3 of who I strongly like. I mean, I could make the case for Abscond. I could see your case for Walk in Marrakesh. I could see the case for this 5, Hendy Woods, who improved and is undefeated through 2 starts. I could see a case for the 7 with Castellano coming off 3 wins, although I think Tampa wins are worth significantly less. I mean, there's a lot of jockeys, a lot of trainers, a lot of horses that on Brisnet have run something around an 85 that probably need to improve about 5 points to win. And I just think that the good horses are good enough here to get it done. So I'm probably not going to be super deep here. I'll use my top three and then maybe take out a little bit of insurance with a couple seahorses. Like the 5 Hindy Woods is one that I do kind of like, but otherwise I don't see this race falling to a bomb personally. I think it's a big field with a lot of good connections, but I think the favorites are solid and you can lean on them if you're playing a smaller ticket.
Yeah, one thing I will say, Josh said before he was talking about figs being sort of wonky on turf races, and the reason is it tends to be these races tend to be very pace dependent. They tend to go slow early, sprint home late, and that doesn't set up for a huge fig. So oftentimes you have to expand your range a little bit in these types of races to get to his point. I think the best horse in the field is Sharing, and if you look at post statistics, I think the 9 hole was about 9%, which is not terrible. But like the 2, 3, 4 paths were something like almost 20%. So there's a pretty pronounced inside bias at a mile. I think it's just a short run up to the first corner, and those horses tend to work out better trips and don't get floated 6 or 7 wide. Obviously on figs and on form, Sharing and obviously Sharing coming off from the Breeders' Cup Juvenile filly and turf win. And Alms coming off from, has thrown up a couple of big figs right back to back to back, a couple of G3 wins, actually the horse is undefeated. So, there's a lot to be said for that as well. I think I'm okay here being pretty wide and spreading and hoping to find that price as long as I structure it right. And it's going to be very interesting before the 7th race, looking at doubles into the 8th and seeing how is the board sort of valuing this versus how I value it. And I will probably do some shuffling around on my pick 5, depending on, how the board values things. But, I can use Josh's Walk in Marrakesh, even though I feel like I've given that horse way too many chances and it's been quite a money burner. Abscond sort of falls into the same category. Seems to be a horse that doesn't really want to win. A little bit of the hangs. I'm more excited about somebody like Henry Woods, who I think is an up and coming horse, and I think you're going to get a price. And also Outburst, who I think the 5-1 morning line seems a little shorter than what I would have expected, quite honestly. But I would think if you forced me to go away from the two logicals, Henry Woods and Outburst, the 5 and 7, Outburst, the 7, are the two that I want after the 9 and the 14. But again, I will probably be pretty spread here, and I'm okay doing a little fishing and trying to find a price.
So a couple notes here from the chat. John Massey's talking about the 3 third race back really blocked off, or he really liked the 3 from the third race. Oh, it's third race back, and last effort was really blocked off. Found trouble, and I think I remember that because I think I was probably yelling at Joe Bravo for kind of doing Joe Bravo things on the turf. Dennis also mentions that Hendy Woods that he's going back a little bit, but 2 back when Hendy Woods broke its maiden. I guess the horse that he beat, I think, came back and won an allowance.
Yeah, Sky Snow was a next out winner, who was the horse that Hendy Woods beat. So yeah, you have that. If you want to play the key race type angle, Hendy Woods does make a lot of sense there. Even though the fig for that maiden didn't come back, the fig for Hendy Woods' last out, that optional 50, actually did come back very strong. And albeit if you're a bit of a trip capper, Hendy Woods was a little hung wide and didn't have the best of trip that day. So yeah, I think there's a lot of case, and I think that 12-1 morning line is pretty generous. I don't think you'll get it, but it's pretty generous here. Again, this is a kind of race where you can get spready, and I understand what Caleb's doing, and I very much appreciate it. I think from a ticket structure standpoint, he makes a ton of sense, saying, hey, this is a big spready race, everybody's going to spread, I'm going to get cute and be really aggressive towards just a couple here and try to get more value. And that's a very smart way to approach it. I'm okay understanding that I'm fishing, looking for that bigger score, and I'm fine spreading here.
Yeah, and I think I know Jason Beam talks about all the time on his podcast. Pretty sure that inside the pylons talks about it. It's the whole zigging when other people are zagging. In a race where there's a real logical single, all right, that's the race that you spread. And where there's a spread race like this where there's 14 horses, you go ahead and you try and single one. Dennis also brought up a good question. If this gets washed off, is there anybody in particular you think stands out on the dirt? Looks like there's no MTOs entered, so if this gets washed off, is there anybody with some good mud figures or dirt figs that you think might stand out?
Yeah, Abscond has real good dirt figs, and Domingo the Four also has real good dirt figs. Henry Woods also real good dirt figs. In Good Spirits has real good ones as well. Sharings isn't bad as well. So I mean, there's a few ways you could go in here. Not a lot of dirt form on any of these. If it does come off, I mean, the only horse with really any dirt experience was Eva War, who broke her maiden across the dirt. I think there's a lot of ways you can go here, and it's going to be very scratch dependent. The trainers are going to say, okay, this is a turf only horse. I want a turf race. I didn't see enough weather in the forecast to really say this is definitely, there's enough rain. I saw a quarter-inch max. I don't think a quarter-inch. Churchill has some very good drainage. They're very well noted for having extremely good drainage. So I don't think a quarter-inch of rain is enough to take this off. But yeah, there's a few in here that you could go with, albeit they are pretty logical players, even on the turf, with the exception of Domingo.
Yeah, I think even like the 11 might interest me a little bit if it comes off the turf but isn't like super sloppy. Broke its maiden here at Churchill. And has speed, a little bit of speed, which on the dirt is always a plus. One horse you did mention briefly when we were talking about the dirt form. One horse that does interest me a little bit, but I will probably not bet, but just kind of, I guess more. I'm just interested to see how this horse does. Is the 4 Dominga. We've seen a lot of these horses coming out of fairgrounds. Just run friggin' lights out. So did win a stakes race at fairgrounds at a short price, but at a mile the pace figure is pretty decent. So just kind of interested to see how this horse comes out of that race. So.
If you're playing the fairground shipper angle, I think Henry Woods is the fairground shipper you want over Domingo. But I understand where you're going with that, and it does make sense. It'll be interesting to see because Domingo is coming out of stakes races where Henry Woods is coming out of some optionals. So I got where you're going with that, Josh.
Yeah, and everyone is saying that they don't see Churchill taking this off the.
Yeah, I mean, Churchill might take the early races off if they get some rain. I'll be surprised if this comes off unless they get a monsoon. And if it does, without knowing the scratches and whatnot, it's really tough to say. I don't think my opinions would honestly change. If the 15 draws in, Eve of War, I'd be all over that horse on and off track. And if Sharing stays in, which I don't know that she would, being out of Spadestown, she has every reason to love the slop and actually broke her maiden over and off track. So those would probably be the two that I use, which doesn't really change whether it's off or on turf.
Yeah, and I'll say, Caleb, even before the stream, we were talking about Eve of War and mentioning that horse and saying if that horse draws in, even if it stays on the turf, we would both probably be very much all over that horse, especially if we can get anywhere near that morning line, which seems extremely generous. I mean, I understand the post is on the parking lot, but Johnny V is good on the turf and can find a good trip.
Oh yeah, I really like the 15 too. I don't know if that horse is gonna draw in, but if that horse draws in, I think that 15, especially at that price, which it won't be. But I think Caleb, you mentioned that even at half that price, the 15 is super interesting.
Yeah, even at 6-1, that horse is an A for me, and even with 6-1, the horse still might be win bettable. Honestly, from the post, that makes it a tougher sell. It depends how many scratches and how far she can move in. But yeah.
Cool. Why don't we move on to the blame, the 1 mile, who has got one of Caleb's. Caleb, this has just got to be an interesting race for you because I see a horse here that you love, and I see like 7 horses that you hate in here. So I'll let you start this one off. I hope you handicapped this one. Did you get this far?
I did. I actually got through them all right before we finished up, and
All
I wrote up an article on premium channels for this one, so I definitely have this one covered. Um, and yeah, a horse that I have loved and have been all over since last year was the 3 Global Campaign, and he's going to be my top pick in this race. And I'm debating about making him a single A. Uh, Maybe not in the pick 5, but I do really like getting a skinny pick 3 through the first 3 races, and making this horse a single. So I just think this horse had issues all through his 3-year-old season. He grabbed a quarter in the Fountain of Youth. He had another injury that kind of derailed him through the middle part of his 3-year-old season. Finally, the connections just gave him some time off from July all the way through April. And then he came back last month at Gulfstream in an allowance that had an okay field. Majestic Dunhill, Spinoff was in the field, the Pletcher horse, Yorktown. And the connections are on the record saying he wasn't completely cranked for that race. He was a little farther off the pace than he normally is, and he still won that race pretty effortlessly. And that's with Landeros, who is not a phenomenal jockey at Gulfstream Park, or has not been, at least for the most of 2020. I think this horse just makes a ton of sense. He makes a second start off the layoff. He's by Curlin, whose progeny are known for getting better with age. You get Jose Ortiz in the saddle, who's never rode this horse before, but even with his struggles lately, is still an upgrade over Landeros. He's got the kind of run style that doesn't put him right on the lead to get burned up by pace, but he should be within 2 or 3 lengths of the lead. And I just think this horse makes a ton of sense. I think that he is the most talented horse in this field, and he's definitely one that I'll be running a ton of pick 3s and pick 5s through.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Caleb. I think he's the A that I want to be the heaviest on. And I think what you were talking about doing in the last race, where you took a big spready race and you got really cute with, I think that's what I'm going to try to do more than likely in this race. And I'm going to use 2 horses. I'm going to use Global Campaign, and I'm going to use Diamond King, because everybody knows me and I'm nuts. But I think both of them can be very, very forwardly placed. Service has still been hitting at a high percentage, even after all the craziness has gone on. And I think Diamond King in here makes quite a bit of sense. Horse always fired really well off a long layoff. And I really this is a race where there are a ton of horses in here that I really hate. I have opinions against. And those are the only 2 in here that, after looking through it and really trying to find other ways to go, I couldn't end up really finding any other horses between those 2 that I really liked. And that's probably, I may try to get cute and get through here with just the 2 A's, or I might use a couple of C's, but I think I'm going to get fairly aggressive and try to press, both Global Campaign and Diamond King.
I'm
gonna get the crazy hair going here, because I'm about to
Wait,
go out on a fucking limb out here. There are 2 horses in here that I really like on a personal level. All right, Owendale, I think, is a freaking really cool horse. Fuck Owendale in this race. Mr. Money, I think that a 1-turn mile is probably hits him right square between the eyes, but I just don't think that he's really rounded into form yet. Fuck Mr. Money here. All right, there's 2 horses here that I want. All right, Mark, you already touched on one of them. All right, it's the 14 Diamond King. All right, you got an E8 on the outside with Kendrick aboard. All right, this horse is fucking going to the lead. We know how Churchill's been playing. We've seen a ton of speed just win, and I always want to see Mooch just send this horse to the front and just fucking go. And I mean, I don't know if you watch any of Diamond King's races. I mean, the horse gets on the lead and the horse just fucking tries. I mean, the Park Sturt Mile, I mean, he was out there and he was just game the whole way and lost to Cold Front, who was a really fucking good horse. Didn't do that well in the grade 3 following up to that, but came back at Aqueduct and won Won a pretty nice race there, beating American Anthem. Same thing on the lead. So I think that Diamond King here makes a lot of sense. And he's definitely going to be the speed horse that I want here. All right. The other horse I want is 30-1 on the morning line. He's got everybody's favorite jock aboard, and it's the 5 Everfast. I want Everfast in this race. I think that if you look at the pace figures that Everfast put up in that last race, they are super competitive compared to the rest of these horses here. I think that Everfast, if he runs back to his last race or even improves slightly, I think he's going to be right in it, especially if you're getting the price even remotely close to 30-1. With Rosario board, you probably won't get. But if you look back, I mean, Everfast's best race was probably the Preakness last year, and that's when Rosario was aboard again. So I'll go back to this Everfast wall at this really big price. I am a Brisnet person. I look at this, and I think Caleb and I, we've talked about this before. Like, I usually don't even look at the speed figures. Like, I use them as a guide, but for the most part, I toss them out. But the pace figures, I think I have a little bit more belief in than you do. And when I see these big numbers, I mean, they just kind of jump out at me. Finished the game second to Desmond, and I think Desmond would probably fit in this race as well. So I think Everfast is gonna be an underlay. So I'm gonna use Everfast. I'll probably key Everfast mostly in exactas, but if I get anywhere close to these kinds of odds, I mean, this will definitely be a win bet as well. But of the horses I'd like most likely to win, I think my number one pick would be the 14 Diamond King.
Yeah, I mean, I can't fault you. The one time that Rosario was up on Everfast, he ran the only real race he's run his entire career. My issue is the fact of the matter that the Everfast just isn't that fast. Horses 1 for 16 lifetime.
So you're saying it's a me horse?
Oh, this is a Josh horse. Yeah, no, Everfast is very much a Josh horse. 1 for 16 lifetime. I understand where you're going with this, trying to, reinvent that Preakness magic. But, man, I have a really, really, really hard time getting there. Although, I feel like now I need to put a Rosario hedge on.
Like, I'm just saying that I think if I get anywhere close to 30-1, I mean, I'm getting the odds to try and relive some Preakness magic here. And, I mean, just like I said, like I pretty much live and die by some of these pace figures, for better or for worse. And his last race, I mean, just fits in with most of the rest of these horses. I mean, I believe Global Campaign's last race, speed figure wise, was better, and was definitely higher on the late pace, but was a little bit shorter. So, it's going to be interesting to see. I think Global Campaign, for my purposes, is going to be too short here to be able to get anything out of, unless combined, I think, with a horse like Everfast. So,
can you hear him?
I can hear you. Your video is a little frozen.
No, it's not a little frozen. It's totally frozen.
Oh, there you go. You're back, Caleb.
You're back, Caleb.
Was all that Everfast talk?
Sorry, Josh. I don't know if it's me, but I didn't hear the last 10 seconds.
Oh, you see, I started talking Everfast and Global Campaign and an Exacta, and all of a sudden Caleb's internet connection just breaks.
Yeah.
So anyways, the point I was just making was I don't think for the way I bet I'll be able to get value out of Global Campaign unless I use a horse like an Everfast underneath. Yeah, I mean, I Global Campaign is obviously the class of this field. I think makes a ton of sense here. But I'm gonna attack this from a pace perspective and key most of my play through the 14, and toss in a little bit of the 5.
I really wanted to argue with you guys about this one, but if Global Campaign is my top pick, Diamond King and Everfast in that order are my second and third picks. So that kind of makes it less fun. I'm with you on Everfast. I don't give a shit about his pace figures. Those mean nothing to me. But I do think that the barn switch made a big difference to this horse. The addition of blinkers made a big difference to this horse. He's now making a second start off the layoff, second start as a 2-year-old. I think there's a lot of angles here that make sense. The jockey for his career best race is getting back on. There's a lot here I like about Everfast at 30-1. Now, there's a point where Everfast is not interesting. I don't know if that's 10-1. I don't know if that's 15-1. But at 30-1, he's very interesting, and I will have him on a couple tickets. But yeah, I'm a huge Global Campaign fanboy. I really hope that these morning lines, at least for Global Campaign, are roughly accurate. I'm afraid they're not. I feel like Global Campaign will be favored, and I think he'll be probably in the 5-2 range. I don't know that we get 9-2. I think 9-2 is very good value on that horse, and I'll have a nice win bet on him if that holds. But yeah, if he does get into the 5-2 or 2-1 range, I think you have to start looking at exotics a little bit because that does get a little bit short. And there's a lot of different ways you can go in this race, but those are the two other horses I'm probably most interested in.
Yeah, and like, there's a couple of nice horses in this race. I like Mr. Money. I just think that, I don't know, Mr. Money's a different horse since that Parks race. I don't know if the horse just needs to round in the form a little bit more. Maybe he's more of a summer horse. But I will definitely fade the horse here at a short price. I learned my lesson last race. What?
I would say, what's your feeling on the logic and putting a little bit of a spin on your Mr. Money thing? Maybe he's just a Churchill Downs specialist. I mean, he's 3 for 4 here. His 2 best races of his career are arguably the Pat Day Mile and the Matt Win. I mean, the Indiana Derby is probably his best, but those two, that Pat Day Mile and the Matt Win, both across the surface, are both really phenomenally impressive wins. Is there just an argument to be made that he was put away in November, he came back in April across a wet fast Oaklawn Mile, didn't handle the surface, gets second star off a long layoff at a track that he loves? I don't think 5-1 is the price I need on him. I need closer to 10-1 on him to dabble here. But I think there's an argument to be made that there's a lot of upside there on a horse I don't like that much. I know you were high on him at one point.
Well, and I think you kind of touched on the main point. And I mean, I will argue that there is a right price for every horse where a wager makes sense. I mean, sometimes that's like 200-1. But I always think that there is a right price for a horse. And I'm not saying that I am under no circumstances betting Mr. Money in this race, but I kind of agree with you. I think Mr. Money becomes a little bit more interesting at like let's say 7.5, 8-1 range. Becomes like maybe a little interesting, but yeah. I mean, the horse for course angle is always a pretty strong one. But I just think that because the Pat Day Mile is restricted to 3-year-olds, and so is the Matt Win, correct? So I just think that he's going to be in an unrestricted race. He's going to be just in a deeper field here. He just hasn't done it against older. I mean, all of his best races were in those 3-year-old restricted races. So while I respect the 3 for 4 at Churchill, I think I will need a better price on Mr. Money in order to kind of dabble. I think the distance hits him right in the right between the eyes. I think this is what he wants. I think he wants a mile, maybe mile and 16th. But his last 2 mile efforts just haven't looked great. So I just don't know if he needs more time or if he just needs Churchill. But I'll sit this one out at anything close to 5-1. And then the same thing with Owendale. I mean, Owendale is 3-1 on the morning line. Like Owendale, I think needs longer. I think he's a 2-turn horse. I think that he wants like 1.25 miles, maybe 1.125 miles, 2 turns. I think the 1-turn mile is not what he wants. I will let everybody bet down this horse. Hopefully this horse takes more money. I have a feeling that Global Campaign will get bet down a little bit more. I know Dennis. I'm sorry, Dennis. I know you're really big. on Owendale. I really like the horse. I think it's a really nice horse. I would love to own Owendale, but I just think that this is too short for him. I know he's won at a mile before at Fairgrounds, but I just think that the horse wants a little bit longer. I'm not super great on remembering distance pedigrees, but Into Mischief, is that generally a router, or is
Like
that
a mile.
sprinter? Mile?
Yeah, Myers. Yeah.
So I guess breeding wise, I mean pedigree wise, he should fit here, but it just
On the
seems,
bottom, he's got a lot of stamina.
yeah, he just seems like he wants a little bit longer. There was other horses here that I was kind of interested in. I just don't think I'm gonna get the prices on them to make them playable. But I think that 5 and 14 for me are at the right prices to make plays at.
I'm just going to come out and say it. Owendale and Mr. Money are takeout reducers. I have zero interest in betting either of those horses. You can give me 10 to 1 on both of them, and I'm not interested. All their 3-year-old season, they ducked any kind of legitimate 3-year-old competition by getting wins at the Indiana Derby, the Remington Park, at the West Virginia Derby. Anytime they stepped up to face real competition or older horses, they couldn't get it done. Owendale did have a nice run last time, running a non-threatening second to Tom's d'Etat, but that was going a little bit farther. I do think this is probably a little short for him, and I don't think he's going to get a favorable pace setup. So yeah, I won't bet either of those two pretty much at any price that is realistic.
I will say in this race, we talked about prices and morning lines. I think the morning lines in this race are terrible. I think you're going to get a lot. I think Global Campaign is going to get at least cut in half. I think you're going to get probably 3 to 1 on Global Campaign, 5 to 2 range. I think 9 to 2 would be an absolute gift. And I think there's, I think that the morning line here is just really bad. It felt really bad. I'm going through the capping this going, wait a second, there's horses on here I hate that are at, 6 or 7 to 1. I think you're going to see a lot of change, and it's going to be one of those races where if you're on the win bet side, watch the board. There's a value proposition. As Josh said, there's a spot where each one of these horses makes sense. You just have to get the right value.
There's one horse here that did kind of popped out of the page on me a little bit. I think that the price is not right whatsoever to bet this horse. But it was interesting, and I guess I kind of want to hear your guys' thoughts possibly on it, and that's the 6 Backyard Heaven. Looks like it's leaving Chad Brown's barn and going into Mike Maker's, but has run some pretty nice races over the past couple years.
Yeah, I think Caleb and I both have a rule about horses coming out of the Chad Brown barn. I thought the horse was very usable. Initially in first pass, I had the horses at B, kind of sitting at a C-ish range right now. Maybe I include. It's going to be partially a bias play there, and seeing how the track is really playing. I could get there. I wouldn't, fault anybody for not liking the horse. And does have, a win across the surface in that Alashiba, which was a pretty legit race. So, and probably the right run style for how the track's been playing. There's a lot of things to like, but that out of the Chad Brown barn really, really scares me because that's an extremely low win angle.
Yeah, I'm not using that horse. I think 6 to 1 is a terrible price on that horse. I would need, honest to God, 20 to 1 to even consider this.
You're probably right. You're probably going to get it, though. I think you're going to get it.
If you get 20 to 1, okay. I mean, maybe. The horse leaves Chad Brown's barn. It hasn't won since May of 2018. It clearly had some soundness issues, missing all that time, leaves the Chad Brown barn. I don't like the horse. I don't like the horse at all at 6 to 1. Now at 20 to 1, I would never say the horse is not usable because he does have figs that would make him very competitive here if you go back 4 years. But yeah, I'm not gonna. If you get 20 to 1, then win bet him. But until I know for sure what you're gonna get, it's just not a horse I'm really interested in. If I was gonna take a horse that is leaving a high profile barn, I'd be much more inclined to look at this 9 horse, Extraordinary Jerry. Leaving the Pletcher barn, coming off of 2 just absolutely barn burner wins. I don't know what those are on the buyer scale. Probably got to be about 100, I would guess. But, from Brisnet being a 95 and a 106, I think those are just monstrous races where he wasn't even asked for his best. I don't know why this horse would leave the barn here, a Fletcher barn rather. But yeah, if I was going to take a horse leaving a high profile barn, I would take the 9 over the 6 all day. And on the morning line, he's twice the price.
Who's Dermot Magner?
He used to be a Fletcher assistant, I'm pretty sure.
Fletcher assistant, who's actually a fairly decent trainer. His percentages aren't high, but he's the personal trainer for one of Fletcher's previous clients, and all those recent 3 races all came back in the mid to high 90s, 91, 97, 96.
Oh wow, that's better than they normally, because I think it's like 13 points or something different. There's some math to it. Somebody one of the Timeform US guys, what's his name? The older
Craig?
guy. Yeah, Craig CJ. He's got like a formula for like a rough estimate. Although, Byers got a human component.
Yeah. I've noticed you really can't. It's not like time-formed Buyer where you can subtract 18 to 20 and get a ballpark fig. I find Brisnet is very inconsistent compared to Buyer. Sometimes they're 10 to 15 points higher, but sometimes they're almost equal. And there's too many inconsistencies for me to apply a formula across the board. But regardless of what figures you use, those last 2 races were impressive. And I think this horse deserves some respect off of that. I mean, they clearly had him pegged as a turf horse that is just better on dirt. So I think that makes him very interesting.
Yeah, I just can't get to him here. His run style for me does not fit what's been working on the track at all. Unless closers start actually getting there at Churchill, I mean, obviously watch the track. If they do start getting there, yeah, he's usable. But his run style, he's going to be way out of it, and I just don't see any way he gets there.
Yeah, and one of the things that does concern me a little bit is, I mean, at a quick glance, there's only one E horse in here, which is Diamond King. But there's a lot of those push button EP types with fairly high early speed figures. So 1 or 2 jocks get kind of dumb on the front end, and that really changes the complexion on how this looks. And I mean, then I think it might set up for a horse like Extraordinary Jerry or I guess Owendale too. But I think I completely agree with you, Caleb. Like, you let Owendale beat you at this price. You let Owendale beat you at double this price, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I just think that sometimes that you gotta just you gotta take what's given to you, and occasionally, a horse is the most likely winner, but if you don't get the right price on it, you either skip the race, or you try and beat it at with other prices. And I think that this is going to be a good example of it, because I don't really want to touch Owendale or anything. I know I'm looking in the chat, and Sam thinks that the horse might get bet down to 6-5, which would be, I mean, if Owendale gets bet down to 6-5, I'm going to be seeing like 4 horses at prices that are going to be just beautiful, and we'll be trying to double out of this race.
Owen 65 is a takeout reducer. Caleb used that term. Owen, that is a takeout reducer.
Yeah, I can't see him 6-5. In fact, I think he floats up from his morning line. I don't think he's 3-1. I think he goes off in the
like 5 or 6-1. I think
maybe 5-1.
Yeah, 7-2, 9-2 sort of range. That sort of a range is, I think, where he goes off.
Yeah, I think Global Campaign goes down. Owendale floats up a little bit. I think Mr. Money maybe takes a little bit of money with this Churchill form.
Comes down. I think that a horse like Everfast won't be 30-1. He might be 20, but he comes down. I mean, even like Long Range Toddy, probably comes down based off his Derby Trail races. Like, I just think that a lot of horses that are bombs are going to float down, and Global Campaign is going to probably get cut in half, which is going to let a couple horses like Owendale and the Backyard Heaven probably double in price.
Yeah, and I know, Caleb, you're interested in Everfast like I am. I mean, I think I'm interested in Everfast at 12-1 or better, probably. I mean, maybe need a little bit of more, but I mean, I don't know. I think that this 30-1 is just not even remotely close. I know Mark. Look at Mark. Mark's got that look on his face, like, oh my goodness.
I probably need 20-1 to win bet him, but I probably will take him at any price underneath of exactas and trifectas.
That was me being knocked out of the pick place 8 first leg.
Oh no. I thought our Everfast talk got to, but that's actually much worse.
I'm curious. Like this, Everfast lost to Desmond last out, and I'm with you on Everfast. But if Desmond is entered in this race, what are your thoughts on him, and what price do you think he makes sense at?
I mean, I think Desmond is probably favored here, don't you think? I mean, him and Global Campaign fight for favoritism.
But I think he'd probably be second or third choice.
I mean, I don't think he's worse than second choice at all. Well, he shouldn't be worse than second choice. Let me put it that way, because I think, like you said, I think Owendale is going to take money, or is going to take more money than he should, especially at this morning line. And I think Mr. Money will probably also not really float up, or will go down in price just because of the connections and the Churchill connection. So I think, but I would think Desmond should be a clear second choice here. I mean, if I were to rank most likely winners to least likely winners, I would slot him right behind Global Campaign.
That's probably fair.
We beaten this death yet?
Yeah, I think we're pretty good. Why don't we move on to the Matt Win now? This race, mile and 16th on the dirt, limited to 3-year-olds. It's worth Derby points this year, right?
Yeah.
Dude, this race is fucking something else, man. I just like, there's literally like one horse in here that I actually think is a future, like, continued to be graded stakes type, and that's obviously the 10 Maxfield. But I am not going to touch Maxfield at 10-foot pole in this race, off the layoff, especially when we're so deep into the 3-year-old season already, and we have so many horses that are already in form. So I definitely want to go ahead and beat this horse, especially at a short price. I think this is, like you said, for the last race, Caleb, going to be the takeout reducer here, because they have Maxfield at 5-2 in the morning line, and I think you had mentioned it earlier, that Maxfield looks sexy because he hasn't raced at all this year, and there's just been nobody's really kind of, especially not in this field, nobody's kind of set themselves apart. So Maxfield looks real attractive in here, just because he hasn't raced. But I think that there are some other semi-legit horses in here with some recent form that I think you can make a much better case for, especially against Maxfield, who I think is going to be like 2-1 or less here.
Yeah, Maxfield. Me and Evil Bob Dole were talking about this earlier, and you stole a little bit of the thunder, but I don't think you can play Maxfield in this spot, at least not with any confidence, because Maxfield is going to get bet like a leading Kentucky Derby contender based off of not sucking, basically, is what that comes down to. Because every other juvenile horse that has run back as a 3-year-old, whether it's been 8 Rings or Dennis's Moment or Scabbard or Governor Morris or any of these 1,000 Words, have come back, stormed the court, and Anno d'Or. They've all come back to suck. So Maxfield has gained reputation by virtue of being on the bench. And he's going to get bet like a horse that's actually good, and we just don't know that he is. I mean, is he terrible? Like, no, probably not. But you got to look back, and his maiden score at Churchill was fine. And then his race at Keeneland, I think he was flattered by a track bias that was very strong off the pace that day. Most of the fall meet at Keeneland was off the pace bias, which is very unusual. But Maxfield and Governor Morris and Enforceable are all horses who came from well off the pace that day and are known to be pretty much off the pace types, if not dead closers. That has not been working at Churchill. This horse has had physical issues. He had a bone chip in his foot. He's missed a lot of time. And I just don't think you can take this horse at any price. I mean, any realistic price. Okay, 10-1, sure. But at 5-2, 3-1, even money, whatever, I think you have to play against this horse. And if he beats you, he beats you. But I think you have to play against him because he's going to get bet as if he's the third choice in the Derby futures pool on the virtue of not racing and not proving to me that he sucks. So yeah, I'm heavy against Maxfield, and if he wins, I'll lose, but that's fine.
I think you've already got yourself a new shirt right now if he wins. But
no. Look, if Maxfield wins, like Maxfield fucking wins, all right. I think the big point here is that Maxfield is going to go off at 2-1, and I was, I think you guys saw me talking in the chat a couple days ago. I love Maxfield. I think this is actually a legit horse. I think this is a good horse. I think that come Derby time, assuming that he gets enough points at some point in time, I think Maxfield might be an underneath type in the Derby. I don't know about winning the Derby. I think there's a lot of monsters out there that will probably just be better horses than Maxfield. But I think Maxfield is a very, very nice horse. What I don't think is that Maxfield is a nice enough horse to beat some of these types of horses here without the pace setup that he's going to need off a long layoff. Like, I just think that there are so many things going against this horse here that this horse being the favorite, like, this is like the quintessential definition of a bad favorite. This is the type of favorite that you want to beat. If you do not try to beat this favorite and you take this chalk, like, you better be praying for prices elsewhere. Like, you better have a good sense other places, because I think you need something like fair value on Maxfield. It's got to be at least 6-1, and I even just don't feel great trying to bet Maxfield at 5 or 6-1. But I think that's probably right around the fair value, because I mean, that means he's got to win one out of every 5 races. He's got to be around 20% here, or 10, or I forget the math. It's 15%, right? Yeah, I think 15%. And I mean, the horse that I like the most in here is, 10 times or 5 times the price of Maxfield. So I think that you got to fade Maxfield, and if he beats you, he beats you. I mean, I guess you could maybe make a case for singling him, but I just it's you single or you beat him, right? And I just think that trying to beat Maxfield is just the easier and the better route, and the more profitable route long term.
yeah, I completely agree with you. I think you have to fade Maxfield here. And he may be the classiest horse in this field, but if Churchill plays any bit near how it's been playing, the last 2 weeks, his run style is just completely against what's been working. And he has to be an absolute freak to win this. And he's coming off a massive layoff. You're basically playing him off one race. I mean, you're playing him off that Breeders' Futurity. That's the only race he's really won. And again, like everybody said, you're playing to hope that he can run back to that or improve off that. But because he hasn't been facing anybody else who hasn't been sucking, so therefore there's no comps for him. He's the horse without a comp. We're betting him because he doesn't have a comparison. Brendan Walsh is not great off a long layoff. He does have a really solid, a couple solid works in there since then. He looks to be working well and looks to be in good form. But I hate his run style in here. I just absolutely hate his run style. I think there are a lot of other places to go. I think Maxwell takes a lot of money. Maybe he wins. If he wins, I'll have him somewhere. He's logical in here. There's no reason to completely toss him. But he's going to be very, very, very far out the back of my plays. I don't know if he's a B or a C. I sort of need to see how scratches go. But there are other places in here I find much more enticing. And I know nobody's really talked about any other horses. The 2 that I am on as my A's are Pneumatic, the 2, who's going to be somewhat forwardly placed. Has a perfect career so far. Looked really good in a couple of races at Oaklawn. And I don't know how Oaklawn shippers have been doing, but a horse that on figs makes a lot of sense and seems to be the improving type, and the pedigree is definitely there. And the other one is New York Traffic, who's going to be super forwardly placed. And I had a feeling when Josh said he was looking for a price, that may have been where he was going. Yep. And Josh and I are on the same horse again. Yeah. I think, with how the track has been playing, New York Traffic with his run style, Paco is just super aggressive. Paco hits at 52% with Safi. And that horse is going to be on the lead and potentially loose. And I think he just makes a ton of sense here. I don't think you're going to get 10-1 here because it's just way too logical. I think you're going to get 5-1. But even at that, I think he's the kind of horse that you sort of have to make an A. And I'll let some of the guys talk about some of the other ones they're on.
I guess I can talk about the other ones, but I am a huge Pneumatic fan. That's my top pick. You've already hit most of the points that I would have made, but this is a horse that I think is going to offer a lot of value because of Max Field being in this race. And I love Pneumatic. I mean, his maiden score produced a couple of next out winners that ran a couple of big numbers. He took another step forward against some pretty decent allowance company and won as easy as you'd like him to win in a 2-turn mile. Yeah, the pedigree is phenomenal. It's a Winchell Thoroughbreds homebred with Asmussen, Santana. Like, there's nothing to dislike about this horse other than perhaps the price. But I'm going to be all over Pneumatic. I think New York Traffic makes a lot of sense. He's probably the speed horse I want the most of. I think he's been a little flattered by his last 2 races, and I'm afraid the price gets too short. Fairgrounds was very, very speed friendly for both Risen Star and Louisiana Derby Day, and I kind of think he just inherited placings based on his early speed. But if Churchill is playing similar, then there's no reason he can't do that again. But I am worried that 10-1 it looks more like 5-1, at which case I'm not quite as interested in him. But yeah, I do think that really after the 2, I had 5 horses written down, being the 6, 7, 9, 11, and 12. I guess if I was going to talk about one of them, it would probably be the 12 horse. I think that this horse gets, it's a tough post to win from. But if you look back, I just mentioned that the Risen Star and Louisiana Derby were both very speed friendly days. And this horse did make up ground in both of those races, especially in the last race where he was dead last by 4 or 12 lengths and ended up getting up for 4th, only a half length out of 3rd to the previous Risen Star winner, Modernist. Now, I'm a little curious about the quality of horses that were really in those fairgrounds races. I'm not convinced those were very good races, to be honest. Wells Bayou's okay, but came back to run pretty poorly in the Arkansas Derby. Modernist is okay. Like, I think New York Traffic also sort of is okay, but I think Major Fed is a horse that has been against a bias in his last 2 races, and it's a bad post. And if he may be against a bias again, and at 5-1, I don't think that's value, but I think you'll get better than that. And if you do, then I think that horse becomes interesting.
Yeah, one thing that we do, I kind of want to keep an eye out for, is to see how much rain they get, how the dirt track is. By this point, if the rain is early, the track will be playing fast or good at the worst, but it'll be fast. But if for some reason something weird happens and we do get a bit of or a lot more rain. One horse that I was kind of interested in was the 7 Necker Island. I think this horse makes a lot of sense on the off track. Horse has won twice here. Is 2 for 2 at Churchill. So this horse I think makes a little bit more sense on an off track, but this is more of on a fast track, more of a C type, maybe an underneath type horse for me. You guys pretty much touched on the top picks. The 6 New York Traffic I think is the very, very clear choice here for me. I think that New York, if I were playing something horizontally, New York Traffic would probably be a lone A for me. Just with the way that the track has been playing, with the connections, with Paco aboard, I think that this horse just makes a ton of sense here. And the price on the morning line looks really great. I agree with you, Caleb. I think we're going to get like 4-1 on New York Traffic. I think New York Traffic is going to be probably second or third choice here. maybe fourth choice. It depends on how much money some of these other horses take, but I think New York Traffic here is going to be my top pick. I agree with you also. I think the second tier for me starts with the 11 attachment rate, mostly because I think the run style fits perfectly in here, is going to be close to the pace. And I think, pace-wise and speed figure-wise, the 11 slots in here and just, fits. Fits with pretty much everything but Maxfield's best race. So, and with the assumption that at least all of us are kind of under, is that we're not going to get Maxfield's best race here. So this horse fits perfectly. The 12 Major Fed, kind of with you as well, ran essentially against the bias, made up ground to a slow pace. I mean, was 12 lengths back at one point in the Louisiana Derby on slow fractions. So we got to hope that, Joel maybe keeps the horse just a little bit closer than 12 lengths off. And then I think that, Major Fed makes a ton of sense here. The only other horse that you guys didn't really talk about that I'm interested in having a little bit of will probably be more of an underneath type, but, I could see a point where maybe I try to win bet this. Is going to be the 5 Flapjack. If New York Traffic doesn't fire his best race, doesn't get out to the lead right away, the only other speed horse here that I think makes sense to me is the 5 here. Pace figure wise, the horse makes sense. If you look at his last out race, was fairly suicidal. The pace, and he was he's right up in there, pretty close to it, and just faded off. So there doesn't seem to be as much speed signed up here, so I think that he'll get a little bit of an easier time. Horse hasn't had the same jock like at all, so we got Bejarano aboard, so I mean, there's a lot of question marks on how this horse is going to run. How is he going to be real near the lead? I'm kind of, like I said, excusing his last race just because of the suicidal pace and the sloppy track. But if I want another horse that's going to be front up on the lead and at a really long price, to probably mostly use underneath, I don't really think that Flapjack can win here. But if we're looking at a real speed favoring track where only one off the pace horse is going to hit the trifecta, I think Flapjack is definitely a horse that can sit there and hang on for second or third. But I think pretty much all my money is going to be flowing through New York Traffic in this race.
Yeah, I think we've kind of covered the major players here. The one I was going to go to is Mystic Guide, and apparently Caleb said that Mystic Guide is going to scratch per Stidham. So
yeah, he's looking for an allowance, they said.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean that's a better spot for him, honestly.
Yeah, this race turned out pretty salty given the lack of other places to race.
Yeah, this race came up fairly salty, but he is one that I may throw in my stable and kind of watch for an allowance race. If they bring him back in allowance, he's an interesting horse. I kind of like him. Pedigree is amazing, and Godolphin horse. There's a lot to like there.
I kind of think it's a shame that I think that with some of the fields that we've seen for just like listed stakes, I'm actually kind of surprised we didn't get more big names, I guess, here. So, I mean, like New York Traffic is, from the Saffy barn and has run some pretty big races. Same with Major Fed, and then obviously Maxfield is the big name here. But yeah, I'm kind of surprised that we didn't get more like Arkansas Derby type horses or anything like that. But I guess most of them already ran.
Yeah, I think you either ran in the Arkansas Derby and realized the Derby is not until September and you're not going to push your 3-year-old, or you've been off for a long time and you want to get a race in, or you don't realistically have Derby aspirations and we're targeting this race anyway. Like, I think that's the kind of field that you got. But I agree with your other points that a lot of the listed stakes, like the Blame and the Tepin, both turned out to be graded stakes quality, and this one does feel a little bit light.
I mean, it's a grade 3, and it feels like a grade 3. Like, totally would make, like, if the Derby had run, this is like, these would be the horses I think would have shown up. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
I'm just kind of surprised that with all the other races that we've seen so far, like just drawing these like amazing and like I guess better quality fields than what they're like advertised as. I mean, this looks like a grade 3, maybe I guess a 3-year-old grade 2 race. So yeah, it was just kind of interesting to me. Um, but it is a super competitive race. I agree. Um, why don't we move on to this last race here? We got the uh, the War Chant Mile on the turf here. Um, Mark, why don't you go ahead and take a shot at this?
Yeah, I'm gonna get a little cute in here. I mean, this race. I think we're talking about these races for $100,000, stakes. Sure, it came up pretty solid. Um, the one horse I'm going to take, and I'm going to absolutely murder the name, and I'm probably going to be very cute around, is Hieronymus. Are we calling it Hieronymus?
That's actually probably pretty close.
Ah, good. I lucked into one finally. I have the horse as a single A. It can be very forwardly placed here. Run style absolutely fits. Been working on the turf. Has beat a ton of the other sort of major players in this race already. Three in a row. Is 4 or 5 lifetime. Obviously, the only one loss did come at Churchill across the yielding turf, but I think is going to be on or just off the lead here. Kind of gets the perfect setup for what's been working on the turf so far. And unless the turf style really runs, I mean, the figs really stand out in Bears figs. Seems to be a horse that Bridgman has a pretty solid handle on, which is shocking for him. And yeah, I think it's a horse I can get cute around. I'm okay in a big field with a horse. I think that just kind of stands out in a number of ways. The other two I want in here is I want a little smooth like straight and a little bit of pixelate. But I'm gonna have to go back here and well, I mean, I have a couple of outside horses. I'm not sure how I'm gonna manage that. When I look at the bias, I think these really really outside posts, sort of outside that, so 10 and outwards are like basically 0% win posts. So I may actually move some stuff around. But was I kind of my first pass? I didn't really see anybody else I thought was better than Hieronymus, however you say it. I'll say it 5 or 6 times differently. And so I decided to get a little cute there.
Oh man, I've been waiting so long for a race that I can disagree with Mark on, and it took us 4 races, but we finally got there. I see this race, I think, quite differently. I think there's a lot of speed in this race. I think that the 3 with Paco probably goes to the lead. I think this 4 goes to the lead. I think the 6 has to go to the lead. I think that you could make a strong case that the 8 goes to the lead on the stretch out from dirt. I think the 9 probably goes to the lead. So I don't think the 6 gets the kind of trip that he's been able to enjoy, where he goes 24 for the quarter mile and then 50 and 2 to the half and then 115 and 3 to the 6 furlongs. That's just, even for fairgrounds where the fractions are typically a little slower, that is very slow. I think this horse has gotten some favorable pace setups. He had 5-horse fields in both of his last 2 races. And I probably won't. I mean, I respect a horse that wins, and I do like that. But this is a horse that I had teetering between a C and a toss. And I haven't decided exactly where I'll put him yet, but not a horse I love. That being said, it's not fair for me to make fun of Mark's pick without throwing one of my own out there. And a horse that I love in this race, that is 15 to 1 on the morning line and will be my top pick, is this 11, Street Ready. I think that this is a horse I actually added to my stable based off of his last win, where Landeros is not a very good jockey. I think we've covered this. And this horse was literally like 5 wide the entire race at Gulfstream. He broke from the 11 post. He didn't clear, but he also didn't tuck in behind anybody. He was 5 wide the entire race on pretty hot fractions. 23 flat and then 46 and 1 is pretty quick at Gulfstream. put away the other speeds, and then drew off in spite of the bad post and the bad trip and arguably the bad ride. I think that was actually just a monster effort. The biggest concern I have about this horse is that you have to deal with Landeros again. And he's also drawn outside once again. But I think that if this horse can just get a little bit of a better trip, he makes a ton of sense in this space. You're going to have about 5 horses that probably gun for the lead. And if he can just tuck in behind them and save a little bit of ground, I think this horse makes a ton of sense. And I think at 15-1, I'll have a huge win bet on that horse at 15-1. I think I would take him. There's no price that's realistically too short that I wouldn't bet that horse at, given what I know he's likely to go off at in this field. So yeah, I'm a very big 11 fan here, and probably will have some pick 3s getting cute to where he's singled, and then maybe a pick 5 where he's going to be an A, but probably not a lone A in this field.
So hold on here for a second. You took a horse and you said, oh yeah, he had Landeros last out and he got beached and he was 6 wide through all the corners because he was on the outside and Landeros couldn't get a trip. And then you come back and say there's a ton of speed in this race. So and he's kind of a speed type. He's going to get floated 6 wide again, and he's going to get the same trip. And the field in here is a ton better than that.
He's going to win. He won last time 6 wide. He's just got to go 5 wide this time, right?
One length is one path. I think if he can go 3 wide, I think he still beats this field.
You're nuts. You're absolutely insane. This horse is going to get the same trip. He's going to be floated 6 wide around both corners. And he's, there are better horses in here than are in that Gulfstream race. None of those Gulfstream horses have come back to win next out. It comes back as a fairly weak race. So, okay, he was floated way wide, but beat a weak field. And you're going to come back and bet him back? Really? Really? Okay, have fun.
I mean, he's improved 3 races in a row ever since the layoff. Looks like he's in form. He's getting better. He had a shit trip and won anyway. And you're going to get 15-1, which is the key. And I think he gets the right pace set up for. I don't really see him as a speed horse. He's never really made the lead except for once. I think he gets that perfect stalking trip. Like I said, the biggest question mark is Landeros. But at 10-1 with your 6 or 10-1 with my 11, I would take my 11 100 times out of 100.
Yeah, I guess my thing with the Hieronymus Harris is the inside drawn speed. So unless you think that Vanzi, the 4, takes to the turf, which if you want to go there, that's fine. I don't tend to think that the horse does. Hieronymus is the inside drawn speed, so he's going to get that rail trip as the speed, and has shown he can finish late. So I don't know. I understand where you're coming from and trying to find a price and trying to find value. For me, 9-2 is fine value here to get cute with.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to single that horse, I'd respect that. It's just not a horse I'm interested in. I don't think he's beat anybody. I mean, he beat Pixelate and Body, whatever his name is, Body Cream. I mean, these are horses that came back to lose at Sam Houston. I just don't think they're very good. And Body Cream had to break his maiden at Churchill Downs. It's just not horses I'm interested in betting. I've never thought the fairground circuit was very good. I think the turf is always speed friendly. This horse has had everything his own way, and I'm not interested in it. From 9-2, 5-1, 6-1. There's probably a point he gets interesting, but I don't think you get there with a horse who's 4 for 5 lifetime.
It's Bodie Cream. He's out of Bodemeister. But okay, I'll excuse it. If you get, I almost think you may get better than your 15-1 morning line, quite honestly. And if you want to go there, sure. But again, it's a horse that's really, run one race, dropped out of a G3 and, an overnight stakes to pop that big fig, and now is stepping back up in class. That's a hard horse for me to get to and to really like, especially in the 11 post where, I think at this distance, it was a 0% win percentage in the last meet. Maybe sits the perfect trip, maybe. But, I would rather, go to somebody like a Pixelate or somebody like that who, doesn't need that trip and isn't going to get floated 6 wide and can maybe save some ground, and somebody like Rosario can pick him off late than I necessarily would getting to a horse that I just think is going to get a terrible trip here.
Yeah, I think Pixelate gets the identical trip to the 11, but I agree with you that Rosario could be the difference there. But I think they have the same run style.
Really? You think the 11 and the 12 have the same run style?
I pretty much do. I think they're both going to be in that 2 to 3 lengths off the pace kind of setup, unless Rosario chooses to take back.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm looking at from time form figs and also from optics, I think that the 11 is going to be much more forwardly placed. But maybe I'm not sure. Maybe the 11 isn't as forwardly placed. I would like the 11, as you said, if he can sit 5 lengths off the lead and there is a ton of pace in here, then you have to like him a little better if he can finish.
I guess I'll start with the one horse I picked that Caleb didn't insult. So I'm gonna start with the 5 Field Pass. So the Jeff Ruby Stakes generally is just hey, let's put all these turf horses into a Derby prep that's on the poly track at Turfway. I think that Field Pass is totally 100% a turf horse out of Lemon Drop Kid. I think that this is going to be a really good spot for Field Pass. I think that his preferred run style is going to be just sitting slightly off the pace. If you look 2 back at the Dana Beach, was sitting 5 off. 5 off the start, and then settled in around 3 lengths off, and then closed in nicely on not exactly a fast pace. I think Field Pass is going to be the favorite here. I'm going to have a hard time getting around Field Pass. So this might be one of the this might be a double from the last race and kind of single into Field Pass. The 2 other horses that I have a little bit of interest in, you guys already touched on the 12 Pixelate. I think I think you pretty much kind of said what my thinking is that Rosario will be the difference. I think that this horse has been really close against a couple of horses in this field. I think that this horse fits here run style wise. I think that this horse is going to want to sit off the pace. I do think that Rosario is probably going to take him back a little bit more than say Landeros will in the 11. So I do think that he's going to be making that one late run. But at 6-1 around that middle price, I think that this is going to. This is going to be a good spot for him. I think pace wise, the horse fits. Speed figure wise, I think he's a little slow, but is getting Rosario aboard. So if anyone's going to move up a off the pace horse on a 1 mile turf, it's going to be Rosario. The other horse that I am very interested in that Caleb completely trashed his character is going to be the 2 Bodie Cream. I mean, I know Caleb, you yell at me for doing this sometime, but that those late pace figures on this horse just scream, hey, a fast pace. He's going to have plenty of pace in here to be able to close into. That Texas Turf Mile, he was 12 lengths off at one point and just came 3 wide, not 6 wide, has got Deshaun Parker still aboard. So Deshaun knows the horse. Deshaun knows how to ride in Kentucky and in the Midwest. So especially at 12-1, I think that this horse is might maybe float up a little bit, because I don't know if the Kentucky bettors are really familiar with Danny Pish and Deshaun. I know used to ride in Turfway, but I don't know if Danny Pish doesn't. I don't think stable a lot of horses in Kentucky. So I think that this could Bodie Cream will be at a nice price, and I just think that pace wise the horse fits, because I do think that like you said, Caleb, there's going to be a lot of speed signed up. I agree with you, Mark. I think Hieronymus is the speed horse that I would want here, but I'm going to kind of just fade the speed here a little bit and go with 3 more off the pace horses in Field Pass, Pixelate, and Bodie Cream here.
Yeah, and for the record, I don't hate Bodie Cream. Yeah, I may have trashed his character a little bit, but I was mostly just trashing the 6. If I had to pick between Bodhi Cream, Pixelate, and Hieronymus, I would take Hieronymus last. I think he doesn't get the right pace set up here, and I would take either of the closers over him. So I don't hate that, especially. I think you're right. You'll get well over 12-1 on Bodhi Cream. But no, I saw it fairly similar. Other horses I kind of considered was the 5 who you already touched on, Field Pass. Field Pass. I think he makes a lot of sense. And perhaps the 1 is a horse I kind of looked at. I mean, I wasn't really sure what to do with this horse. He's going to have the off the pace run style that I think I want in this race, but he's been really off the pace in his last 3, which really wasn't how he's run before that. So I'm not really sure that I'd love this horse. If you get 12-1, I think he's interesting. If you go 2 back, he was only beaten a length and a quarter by Decorated Invader, who's arguably the top 3-year-old turf horse of the crop so far, until we see what Structure can do again. But yeah, I really thought that this horse was interesting. He should get a hot pace to run at. And I don't love him, but I do think at 12-1, he's very usable. He gets a nice inside draw to save all the ground. And Leperoux has to navigate a trip, but we're in Kentucky. And as long as we're in Kentucky, he's got a shot.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned Leperoux, and I guess we can't not talk about this race and not mention the 10 Shared Sense. So Flo is a different jock in Kentucky. I believe I was on the record the past couple days just trashing Flo the jock a little bit. And I think I listed like 20 jockeys I'd rather use than Flo, including a couple Mountaineer jocks. But Flo in Kentucky on the turf on a closer, riding for Brad Cox. I mean, in a vacuum makes a ton of sense. This horse has never run on the turf. Cox is 30% first on the grass. This is out of Street Sense, so a decent turf pedigree. I think Street Sense is kind of go both ways, but decent turf pedigree with Bernardini on the bottom. So I mean.
The turf Tommies are pretty terrible on that horse.
Bernardini on turf makes me want to puke in my mouth,
Yeah,
Josh. How could
I know.
I mean, 269 turf Tommy is pretty poor. I maybe the horse likes turf, but I think that they're trying to fish for something here.
Yeah, it's really. I don't know why Brad Cox puts this horse here, unless he just knows something, or I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's hoping it gets washed off. I don't know. It's just really interesting to me because if this wasn't any other like regular ass turf horse, this horse would make a ton of sense here. I mean, like if that maiden win that got washed off was actually run on the turf, and those figures were there. I mean, I think this horse makes a ton of sense. So I guess this horse just kind of confuses me, especially at this price. So this is probably gonna be one that I'm gonna keep an eye on the tote board, because if I see this horse all of a sudden like at 6-1, this might be the prototypical they knew horse. So I think this might be one to kind of watch out for, because I mean, I think we talked about this earlier in chat. I mean, Flo for anybody else, just like, okay, throw out Flo and Saratoga, throw them out. Flo for Brad Cox in Kentucky, I mean, you kind of got to take a look. I mean, they're winning at 30%, and then this move for Cox is hitting at 30% as well. So it was just something that was interesting to me, that kind of pointed out or that kind of popped out of the paper a little bit. And the horse's run style on dirt seems to fit what I think would win on the turf. So that also interests me a little bit. I guess I'm just kind of confused as to why turf now in this spot, in such a such a tough spot when I'm sure they could have tried to run this horse in a number of races before this.
Yeah, this horse has actually. I just looked at this horse and I was like, wait a second, something doesn't quite add up here. And then I figured out what it was. This horse has a really amazingly cool asterisk next to its name, which is the fact that the horse has 2 wins, but has only actually crossed the wire in front once. Because if you look back, the Blackberry Wine DQ, this is the horse that took advantage and broke his maiden in a maiden special 93 when he lost by 5 3/4 lengths. Cool little asterisk there if you're horse racing geek.
I mean, do we have to talk about Billy Bats at all? I feel like we do, even though none of us really mentioned him. I don't really like the horse just because he's stuck in the parking lot. He's a horse that I think kind of needs the lead or needs to be very close to the lead. And he's coming back from Saudi Arabia, which I treat the same way as the Dubai Bounce. So I won't be using that horse. It's also a Santana on turf, which is not my favorite song and dance. But I think you have to at least address this horse, who probably would have won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile if he doesn't run into the rail deep into the stretch. So, I mean, is anybody here considering him?
No, I'm not using him at all. I have a number of reasons for not using him. I think he probably actually wants to be shorter than this. I don't think he actually wants a mile. I think he might be a 6.5 sort of furlong horse with that pedigree. And quite honestly, Dubai Bounce. I mean, I realize he's coming out of Saudi Arabia, so Saudi Arabia Bounce, that's got to be a thing as well, right? And I don't know why he's sort of here. I mean, coming out of the Peter Miller barn, first for Asmussen. Asmussen probably has to take a stab right with him, but like his figs don't really stand up with what he needs to run in here to be competitive. And I don't really love his run style. He's not fast enough to really make the lead. He's stuck out in the parking lot, and he's going to be overbet. I have a hard time getting there.
Hey, Mark, do you have Formulator up right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you look? So someone, Easy Effin' Money, brought something up on that Blackberry Wine race from Shared Sense. So what was that, 3 back? Can you pull up the next out chart for that? He says that a couple of the horses that came out of that race won allowances on turf afterwards.
Yeah, Blackberry Wine won next out. Bioprospector won next out.
Who finished 3rd in that race?
Assad, AHSAD.
Okay, I thought it was a different horse. It just says ASD on mine, so obviously that could be like 30 million horses.
Yeah, Assad is still a maiden.
I was just interested to know that. That's actually one of my one of the things I really like about Formulator, and I kind of hope at some point Brisnet comes out with something similar. Being able to just click on those charts and just see, like, next time out. Dennis and I were talking offline about I think it might have been like Gold Street's maiden race. There were just like a ton of horses that came out and won out of that race, and one was a horse that I guess had like a real long layoff and had a maiden in Oak Lawn. And I kind of pointed it out. I clicked on it and I noticed, I'm like, dude, like 6 of these horses I think came back and won. And sure enough, the horse friggin' ran off the screen at like 10-1 or something, or 12-1. It was friggin' nuts.
I did miss one. Mishko has also won 2 races both on the turf, a maiden 30 at Fairgrounds and then an optional 50 at Fairgrounds, and finished 4th in that black gold race. So I mean, there's a couple of winners, but it's not one of those races that blows you away as being a prodigal race. A lot of the horses that were sort of towards the front, I mean, you're talking horses that were in the back by 20 lengths, but they're coming back to win. I don't know. I understand the key race thing, but I don't think a horse that gets beaten 20 lengths somehow got something out of that race that moves it forward going forward.
Yeah, and like, I mean, I'm not betting this 10, but I just thought it was just an interesting spot for this horse, especially given the connections. So if you see some fuckery on the tote board, that could be why, or somebody knows somebody. But going back to Billy Bats, I kind of agree with you. I forgot at this point who said it, if it was you, Caleb, or Mark. I think I would have liked seeing Billy Bats come back and run at 5.5 on the turf first time out, and then maybe trying to stretch out again after that. So I mean, this is, I think, a real clear fade. This is the type of horse that I hope takes money, but and it might, because people are going to see that juvenile turf effort from last year. So hopefully this horse takes a little bit of money, but this is definitely take out reducer territory here, especially at anything close to 5-1.
Yeah, doesn't City Zip over Giants Causeway kind of scream sprinter to you? I mean, that to me it does.
City Zip tells me sprint. Giant Causeway tells me route. So I think he can get a mile. Now, off the layoff and the shipping angle, I don't know. Like, I think you kind of have to fade him off of that. And I don't think he'll make any of my tickets. But it's interesting that, not that I do this all that often, but if you compare the speed figures on Brisnet, his last 4 races, not counting the Saudi Arabia race, were all about 90, between 88 and 92. Whereas DRF has them much, much lower in the mid 70s, which, like I said, I don't really do the conversion factor, but just, ballparking comparisons, Billy Bat's last 4 races are faster than the last race from Pixelate, the last race from the 2-horse, Body Cream. Like, there's a lot of horses in here that I think look very different depending on which set of speed figures you choose to believe. I think Billy Bats is a good example of that, who looks very good on Brisnet and very slow on DRF.
Yeah, and I'm a DRF person, so he didn't even really throw off anything. I kind of took a quick pass at him and just went and discarded him. And then looking back, I went, oh, geez, I may have missed something, but the figs just don't stand out. He's 10 points too slow to win this on DRF figs. Again, I understand that a lot of times it pays to look at multiple figs and sort of understand what they're good at. DRF sometimes can, any figure can be deceiving if you take it in a vacuum.
Yeah, and Easy F and Money is, I think, he's still talking about this 10, and he says that the 10's playing along probably is turf, and I agree. I mean, that makes total sense that that they want this horse on turf. First time on turf in the stakes race, I think is going to be way too deep waters for this horse, especially against some fairly proven turf types here. So
yeah. I mean, it's Godolphin. They ran him, that Keeneland in that Churchill race. May have been too late in the season in Churchill in November to find a turf race for him, and then they. Well, no, it obviously wasn't with that second race, because the third race was taken off on the rain. So they definitely tried to make him into a dirt horse. I don't know. It seems they've tried turf in the past. Turf Tommies don't say this horse does well on turf. I mean, yeah, again, as Caleb said, Bernardini on the bottom, or at Bernardini anywhere in a turf horse's pedigree makes you want to puke. He's a terrible turf sire. But maybe, I'm not
bad as Union Rags.
Okay, he's not that bad, but he's close to being as bad. It's a real stretch to get there. And being a handicapper and being one of those things you always teach new people is always distrust a horse doing something for the first time. And you're doing something for the first time at stakes. Like that's like double scary.
Yeah, I won't talk somebody off of 15-1 that they like. And you'll probably, even with those connections, you'll probably get at least 15-1. But that's not a horse I can get to. I think if the plan was to put him on turf, then you put him on turf. You don't wait until the end of November to try turf in Kentucky at the end of the meet that gets washed out. And for all I know, he was the main track only entry that day because he never tried turf again. So I'm not sure. I'm not saying he wasn't main track only. It just, I don't know. He doesn't strike me as one that screams turf on pedigree. Cox is strong with switching dirt to turf. You do get Drew up and it's Godolphin, but yeah, I don't think there's any chance I'll be that horse.
You run this horse at fairgrounds, right? Like, wouldn't that have been if they really wanted turf this whole time?
Yeah, you don't ship this horse to Oaklawn if you want him on turf where they don't have a turf track.
Yeah. So it's just like I said, I only mentioned it because I just thought that all of those connections and stuff. I kind of agree with Ease and F and Money. This kind of screen, like, I know Bernardini at the bottom, but um, the trajectory and the connections, I think, kind of make you think that they've probably been thinking about turf. But you try this horse in like an optional claim or an N2L or something, or some other type of allowance race or something in turf. You don't. I mean, maybe it's the only race they could find, but yeah, I'm just interested to see how this horse runs. The run style fits what I think wins this race, but trying turf for the first time is a no go for me here. But yeah. So Mark, I know you're out of the pick place 8 there at Los Al. So anything else going on? What's your next thing you're looking at tomorrow? Are you just mainly sticking with Churchill tomorrow, or what were you looking at?
Yeah, I'll probably be primarily Churchill tomorrow. I think that's probably the best card that's out there. I haven't looked at Santa Anita, and that's not a track I do well at, so I tend not to even look there. I'll just be playing Churchill tomorrow, and I'll be probably around Discord later on.
Caleb?
Yeah, I'll be probably split between Churchill and Santa Anita. I was very close to having a very nice day at Santa Anita today and didn't quite get there. But Santa Anita Churchill is the best card tomorrow for sure. But I do think Santa Anita, I mean, Irad Ortiz is out there riding for Chad Brown. You have United making his comeback race. There's a couple decent races. I really think Monday is the day for Santa Anita when they have the Shoemaker Mile and some of the big stakes races on Memorial Day. I think that's the day I'll focus more out west. So tomorrow I'll probably be more or less focused on Churchill, and depending how that goes, we'll probably be dabbling at Santa Anita.
If it makes you feel any better, I did just double check Remington, and a couple of middle horses won that would have probably broken up every single friggin' ticket. So
yeah, I've been checking the whole stream.
Yeah, so it's probably a good thing that I decided to skip playing this. The first 4 races were all inside and outside, but looks like it's kind of evened out. So thank goodness. Ease and F Money says Lone Star Putt Turf Course. Yeah, I had mentioned this earlier. I think that Texas turf racing provides a lot of value because you get a lot of dirt horses that are running on that turf course and that have really good dirt form. And so by looking at breeding statistics and stuff like that, and just betting the turf horses, you can usually find pretty decent value. I'll be sticking to Churchill and Santa Anita, which are tomorrow, which are the kind of the 2 tracks I've been focusing on. I haven't been doing all that badly at Santa Anita, but as per usual, I think I've just been one race off on anything I've been trying to play horizontally, and not getting the good enough odds on horses I really like to win bet. So, but I haven't lost my ass like I did at Oaklawn and Gulfstream. So I'm going to continue to avoid Gulfstream like the plague. Now that real racing is back. So, any closing thoughts, guys? No.
Nah, it's a good card tomorrow at Churchill. Like, I think it's a really, I mean, the whole card, it's not just the late sequence. I mean, the stakes are in the later half of the card, but it's huge fields and really competitive races. It's a hard track for me to play. I don't play here often other than big days, but I think that if you pick your spots, like, I think you can make quite a bit of money, especially on a day like tomorrow where they have just really big fields.
Yeah, I think that late pick 5 sequence actually pays. I think there's a lot of chance for really upside horses. And I think, again, Churchill is a logical track. It's not a track where a lot of 30-1s win. It's a track where logical things, connections, things that, rudimentary handicapping really works there, pace and speed. So, yeah, it's a track I find logical. I find it fun to cap, and I'm pretty excited for that card tomorrow. That late sequence is good. I really like it.
I think it's a track where 96-1s run second, right?
Oh, that was harsh.
Dude, I cannot believe he dropped the whip.
Too soon.
He dropped the whip. Oh, man. Dude, I was just, I still can't believe it, man. I just I had to watch the replay like 4 times, and I just like sat there and looked at it, man, and just kept on going back,
Someone
watching the whip
did
just
ask.
hit the ground, horse behind just kick it up in the air. Oh.
Someone in chat did ask what we think the late pick 5 tomorrow pays. I think personally, I see it going chalky, price. And I'm not saying like favorite per se, but like probably one of the top 2 or 3, like Dunbar, Julie, then Alms or the other horse, I forget the other favorite. And then maybe another like Global Campaign. And then I think you do get prices in the last 2. I would guess it pays about $2,000. I don't think it pays enormous, but if only one of the chalky horses wins, and which I'm assuming will be Julie or Dunbar Road, and you can get around Alms and the other turf horse in the second leg, and you can get around Global Campaign and Owendale in the third leg, then I definitely think this pays. You're looking probably at 5 figures at that point.
Yeah, completely agree. If you're going to ask me without you saying anything, I was going to say 2,500 range for a base bet. And I think that's the same. There are, to me, 3 really binary legs where if you can get around the favorite, it exponentially increases the price. Obviously, if you can get around Dunbar Road, one of the 2 logicals there, that leg really ramps up the turf mile with the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Philly turf winner coming back. I think that's one of them. So there's a couple legs there. If you can get around those, kind of 2 short priced horses you're expecting there, it really ramps up the payouts.
Yeah, I'm always bad trying to guess what those things pay out, but so I would definitely agree with whatever you guys you guys are thinking. I think, like you said, I think that first leg chalks out, but there's definitely a lot of prices in there that I really like. So I think if it goes the way I kind of think it's going to go, I think that you're looking 4 figures minimum, and you could be a really good payday. But yeah. So once again, happy birthday to our boy Chase. So shoot him a message on Twitter, on Discord. Wish him happy birthday. Just a quick reminder, we did start coming out with a little bit of merch. So we do have a couple of shirts, notebooks, hoodies, and various other stuff that we put up on our website at ontheronglead.com. So you'll be able to find stuff there. You've probably seen our links in Discord. So just anything that you guys end up buying just pretty much helps pay for any kind of hosting costs and stuff that we have. So it's not much. So I mean, even just like one shirt probably helps pay for like a month of hosting. So it's not really crazy. And
we're not making anything off this. This is purely to cover.
Yeah, no, just purely recovery.
Hosting for our stream and to maybe help out a little with some costs associated with Discord. None of us are going to make a penny off this. We're actually all pissing money into this game. So
yeah, I mean, I think the moment any of us makes any the moment any of us makes any money, it for the most part ends up going back into this stuff anyway. So but yeah, just take a look at it. And if you got any ideas or feedback, I'm always open to stuff. So just hit me up on Discord or Twitter. But we're on the wrong lead, at wrong_lead on Twitter. Obviously, you guys know our YouTube. You can find us in Discord. And yeah,